Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Terry Robinson, your moderator for today's Roundtable webcast, Managing Zero Trust in a Complex World, brought to you by FCW and sponsored by Presidio Federal and Cisco. With the executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity, driving federal agencies, their employees and customers to find new ways of identifying, deterring, and responding appropriately to sophisticated cyber attacks, the zero trust model combined with multi-factor authentication tools can provide balance between security and usability for workforce, workloads, workplace, and user devices. FSIs help agencies to design a customized structured environment for applying never trust, always verify, assign least privilege by leveraging the right tools to secure access across applications and environments. These approaches are appropriately agnostic as to the content and composition of an agency's network and provide a strategic framework for continuous verification of a system's operational status with respect to security objectives. As serious as agencies are to create more effective ways to collaborate with employees and mission partners while providing critical services to the public, cyber criminals are just as serious about fine-tuning their skills to infiltrate agency assets. A well-planned security architecture and continuous IT modernization efforts can protect federal networks for both cloud and on-prem resources. So the time is now for agencies to execute their updated cybersecurity strategies. Today, you're going to learn about the best practices to secure increasingly critical resources. And you're going to hear agency experts' experiences with inter and intra-agency communications and data protection capabilities. And you're going to get some next steps on where to look for the expertise in implementing a true zero trust environment. Our speakers today are David Shive, CIO, GSA, Sunny Bhagowalia, who is the Assistant Commission AC, OIT, and CBP Chief Information Officer, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and Clark Anderson, who is the Security Solutions Architect for Presidio Federal. David oversees GSA IT and information technology operations and budget, ensuring its alignment with agency and administration strategic objectives and priorities. He joined the U.S. General Services Administration's Office of the Chief Information Officer in November of 2012. Prior to that, he was the director of the Office of Enterprise Infrastructure, responsible for the enterprise information technology infrastructure platforms and capability that support the GSA business enterprise. He was also acting director of HR and FM systems for the GSA CFO and CPO offices. Prior to joining GSA, he served in the District of Columbia government as a CIO, and in this role, he had executive responsibility for agency IT operations, including financial systems, security and privacy programs, internal controls and compliance, strategic planning, enterprise architecture, and performance management and measurement programs, and he directed the transformation of enterprise systems and processes to public and private cloud hybrid. He began his career at Lockheed Martin in management and consulting roles, overseeing large customer-centric IT organizations serving state and local, federal, and international government customers. Sunny has more than 36 years of senior technical, managerial, and executive leadership experience in private industry, the U.S. government, and state government. He spent more than 21 of those years in senior executive capacity, including more than 17 years as a member of the Senior Executive Service, 1 year as a senior level in the federal government, and 3 years as a senior executive in state government. He served in key CIO leadership roles at 5 agencies: Bureau of Indian Affairs, U.S. Department of the Interior, State of Hawaii, U.S. Department of Treasury and CBP, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Sunny also served in Chief Executive Officer roles as a Deputy Associate Administrator for Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies at GSA, and as a Program Management Executive Assistant Director at the FBI, U.S. Department of Justice. He also served for 14 years in industry at Boeing, ultimately serving 5 years in senior leadership roles as a chief engineer manager and an honorary senior principal engineer in the Boeing company. He has used his knowledge of IT, information resource management, cybersecurity, and business process reengineering to transform and secure organizations, and has helped the federal CIO, CTO to roll out foundational White House government-wide initiatives such as open data, federal cloud, FedRAMP, and federal data center consolidation. Clark brings unique perspective to cybersecurity, having had a hand in designing and managing networks for all branches of the military, working with international coalition partners, and the security challenges of integrating with most of the federal law enforcement agencies. His specialty is in architecting and engineering security for diverse coalitions. He most recently worked with the Army in designing security integration for a global virtual training environment for coalition exercises utilizing rapid prototyping of the latest technologies in mapping, gaming, simulation, and training. His career in security began when he founded a small manufacturing company that built trail sensors and image transmission systems for military, federal, and corporate clients. Clark was the information assurance manager for more than 2 years for U.S. Forces North in Afghanistan for all U.S. networks and a 20 coalition mission partner network. He was the only contractor serving in that role in any region and supervised a massive network expansion during the surge. We're delighted to have David, Sonny, and Clark here today. And before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping issues to go over with you. If you would like to enlarge the slides, look for a square icon at the top right corner of the slide window. You can also view the presentation in full screen mode by clicking the squared arrows icon. If you would like to submit a question at any time, you're going to find a question field to the left of the slide windows where you can type in your question, then hit submit. We will address those questions at the end of the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, click the yellow question mark icon below the slide window for technical assistance. We're going to send you a link to the archived version of the session so you can view it again or share it with a colleague. We also will send you the on-demand version of the webcast, which will be available for 90 days after today. And now I'd like to welcome David. Hi, David. Let's get started.
Thanks, Terry, for that great introduction. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, and frankly, that's the part that I'm most interested in, rather than hearing me talk for 10 minutes, is the Q&A afterwards. So anybody that's listening in, please be thinking about any important questions or pertinent questions that you might have. Sonny and Clark and I are looking forward to answering them at the end of the program. It's an honor to be with you today for this webcast and to be in the company of so many people from the CIO community, both in government and in industry. It's also a busy and exciting time here at GSA. We're working hard to support the administration's 4 key priorities. COVID-19 response. This pandemic has just been giving us a run for our money, and we're excited to continue to work on behalf of the citizens of the United States to find elegant ways to get through this pandemic as quickly as possible. We're focused on climate change. We're focused on economic recovery associated with the pandemic. And we're focused on racial equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility to make sure that this government not only serves all parts of the country, but that we are representative of all parts of this country as well, that we look and feel like the people that we serve. To achieve these important results, digital transformation initiatives are playing a big role here at GSA and in the larger federal enterprise as GSA serves that enterprise. Before I share more about our efforts, I'd like to tell you that I have a techie dream job here at GSA. It is a great position to be able to affect the entire federal enterprise and a great place to work. So if you're interested in public service, come check us out. Go to gsa.gov and look at some of the available jobs there. It's a great, great place to work. Our topic today, Zero Trust, is key to any successful digital transformation. Let's start the discussion by reminding everyone that Zero Trust is not a technology, but it's an approach to cybersecurity. It isn't a single solution either. It requires a multi-pronged approach to how you do technology. It requires a multi-pronged approach to how you do cybersecurity and builds on the existing cybersecurity principles in play across the technology landscape today. Here at GSA, we've transformed our software security strategy to a zero trust strategy that aligns with the administration's goals, of course, for advancing zero trust, but also is aligned with best practice in the cybersecurity space. We're doing this by leveraging the best practices detailed in CISA's zero trust maturity model and the draft OMB memo on moving government to zero trust. Like many organizations in government and industry, we have traditional perimeter-based security model for the network that's been in place for years and years. It's served us well, but its effectiveness is diminishing over time. Zero Trust presents an opportunity for a pivot. We're evolving from our traditional perimeter-based compliance-oriented model to a zero trust architecture that considers resources and access as fundamentally untrusted. You heard that right, untrusted. Instead of verifying devices and accesses at the perimeter with multifactor. Okay, yeah. Got some feedback on here. Instead of verifying devices and accesses at the perimeter with more ubiquitous access inside the network, with zero trust, we seek to verify everything and anything attempting to access any asset within the computing enterprise, and verifying that access continually. Just because you trust it in one moment won't mean that you're trusted in the next moment. And zero trust envisions that world where you're continually checking that. This represents one of the key changes from traditional access and control models that have been in place in the federal government. GSA was honored to recently be awarded a technology modernization fund disbursement to modernize legacy network systems and advance our zero trust architecture strategy. We were one of 3 agencies that were awarded these funds, and we're beginning by focusing on the zero trust building blocks that we believe are foundational, and may include, for users and devices, we're seeking to modernize and redesign our 20-year-old Active Directory stack, and to align our new ICAM target architecture to ensure secure authentication and identity validation for key personas, including GSA staff, GSA partners, public access, and cloud-based solution providers where and when possible. For networks, we're aiming to break down our traditional perimeter-based approach in favor of moving security directly to the users, devices, and applications, and then ultimately to data. Here we have 2 key efforts focused on achieving micro-segmentation of those kind of personas and those elements. We're deploying secure access service edge solutions that directly connects users everywhere, no matter where they are, at home, in the office, via broadband, at Starbucks, on the central security stack. And that achieves secure authentication, validates identities, and negotiates access at the application level. This is not static access, it's access based on the persona's posture of that given moment. That changes in real time. We're also achieving micro-segmentation within our building security network in our 500 GSA buildings that house IoT and operational technology. We have one of the largest and oldest operational technology plants in the federal government, and we've needed to put this micro-segmentation wrapper around it to make sure that those non-IT devices are as secure as the IT devices that we run in our enterprise. Last, we focused our area on furthering and modernizing our security operations center. You know, any security topology or technology in place that doesn't have people assessing the value of the data that they're providing isn't really all that valuable. We're expanding it to cover our government-wide shared services, things like forms.gov, login.gov, max.gov. And we've invested heavily to achieve reciprocal security for workloads in the cloud as strongly as we have on-prem. To achieve this, we're investing in security automation, custom dashboarding, detection aligned to application workflows and business functions rather than a siloed systems perspective. And we're also doing ongoing curiosity hunting in many different forms. By implementing these modernization efforts, we hope to improve our user experience through seamless global connection to GSA managed computing environments and applications while maintaining these zero trust principles. It will improve our cybersecurity capabilities to continually verify the security of users and devices and applications and data, as well as to achieve broad-based visibility across the GSA ecosystem with enhanced capabilities to leverage automation to manage and respond to threats in real time. I'll hand it back to you now, Terry. I'm looking forward to hearing Sunny and Clark's perspectives on Zero Trust as well, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A at the end. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And we're going to hand it over to Sunny now.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today. Just to let you know, in the last 15 minutes, what we've been working on is a zero trust environment where we were blocking the video and a VPN just to even get to this telecast. So we managed to be on, and hopefully you can all hear me and see me. All good? All right. So again, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. To get started, I'll talk about how the Office of Information and Technology supports the overall Customs and Border Protection mission, and how OIT supports the CBP daily operations. And then I'd like to touch a little bit on the OIT focus areas. This information will sort of provide you a little bit of the background as well as some of the context for our discussion. As you know, CBP is sort of the largest law enforcement agency in the United States. And we've been pretty busy with a lot of things that we've had to do to make sure that the border is safe, that we still promote legitimate travel and trade, and make sure there's economic prosperity that we track and support every day. So to do that, I just wanted to mention that how OIT supports the CBP mission is we sort of leverage the agency's unique authorities and data holdings and intelligence enterprise and partnerships, along with situational awareness, to make sure that we impede and respond to illicit cross-border traffic and identify, address threats. We sort of leverage cutting-edge technology. We've integrated sort of classified and sensitive information so that we can better inform who's coming in and out of the country and make sure America remains safe, and improve stakeholder interactions. As David mentioned, and as Clark will as well, it's a tremendous honor to be in the government and serve our mission, because there's amazing capabilities that we deal with every day. In CBP alone, my office handles 40 billion with a B data exchanges every day, and we are blocking almost 40 million attempts a day. And so just to give you a scale of kind of things that we're dealing with. It's quite extensive in terms of what we do in making sure that the zero trust environment is particularly apropos and is a vision that we all want to achieve. We have 5 enduring mission priorities that we focus on in CBP alone: counterterrorism, combating transnational crime, securing the border, facilitating lawful trade, and protecting revenue, as I mentioned. And of course, also on the other side, facilitating lawful travel. We handled about 1.2 million passengers a day, and nowadays we're obviously after COVID, a little bit less, about half or a little bit less on that, but things are picking back up. And we operate at 328 ports of entry and safeguarding roughly about 7,000 miles of land border. I think one of the things that I want to talk about with 68,000 employees, and then obviously with dealing with some of the largest crises that we've dealt with in the past year. Can you just imagine? We've operated in a global pandemic, the largest global pandemic. We also facilitated and supported the largest airlift from Afghanistan. We also were operating in terms of, our sort of large number of encounters that we had on the border, along with, of course, all the challenges with COVID that, stopped some of the fee collection and affected us how we can do that. And of course, on cybersecurity, all of us have been dealing with attempts from supply chain, sort of the largest attempt at that, to any kind of new thing that we're doing in terms of Log4j and all the other challenges that we face every day. I'll just say that zero trust is definitely an environment that we want to sort of focus on. And one of the priorities that we had out of the 6 priorities that I've been focusing on, which is mission applications, making sure we have mission infrastructure, trusted partnerships to make sure we're supporting all the right functions, making sure we're looking at the governance of a portfolio, and making sure that cybersecurity privacy is all looked at together with digital records, and making sure that our business operations, at the end of the day, as David mentioned, it's all about the people, and really taking care not only of ourselves, but also making sure that how we deal with the public is done, in a empathetic and obviously a supportive manner. I'd say in the cyber area, zero trust and implementation has been one of our challenges, and this is part of a journey. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon, and then we have to take some time to sort of with switching to remote work. We have to look for ways that we can deliver the missions while remaining secure. And I can just say to you that while most of our agents and officers are still on the front lines every day, we also have a large workforce that is working remote. So securing collaboration in a complex world is really important. We have to obviously make sure the best practice is always there for expanding, anything from obviously the NIST framework that we look at in terms of identifying, protect, detect, respond, recover. But there are some basic things that you got to do. Patch management, handling several million of these patching that we have to do across several thousand operating instances, every year. And I think keeping up with all the different OS application versions, because we still have to deploy capability. I mean, we were deploying, for example, for some of the things in Afghanistan, deploying stuff which was done in like not only fast agile, it was done like next day sort of delivery in some capabilities, because as people are coming in, we have to vet who they are and make sure that we're ready to proceed. So I think looking at also collaborative tools that allow us to work with each other, so to make sure they're secure and FedRAMP, policy-based protecting, multifactor authentication, of course, end-to-end encryption. So we have a dedicated zero trust project manager working under the CISO, and most of our experiences are inter and intra-agency collaborative capabilities, where we look for expert resources to how we can protect and maximize this collaboration. Because even within the government agencies, we're working across 3 enclaves, and using encryption, using various ways that we can exchange information together with reliance on our networks to be able to connect to each other. It's become a challenge that obviously sort of the lowest common denominator can affect others. So this zero trust environment is definitely one of the things that we're watching, and we are implementing a very, logical, tactical, and a strategic transformation to achieve that, which will take some time. We work, of course, with CISA and OMB and DoD and other areas. And I think what I'll just say, we work within the guidance, the architecture, the policies, but at the end of the day, it's all about the people, policy, process, technology, governance. And at the end of the day, obviously, we have to be right 100% of the time, and unfortunately, the adversary has to be right just 1% of the time. And to me, those are challenges that we experience. So I'll stop right there, and I look forward, as David mentioned, to the conversation, and with my colleagues who are such experts, look forward to sharing with you how CBP is sort of supporting the mission. And back to you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Great. Thank you so much. And Clark, take it away.
Well, thanks, Terry. Hi, everybody. I'm Clark Anderson. I'm a security solutions architect with Presidio Federal. Well, it's been great to hear Dave and Sonny's perspective. They have some serious challenges. Let me tell you a little bit about our company and then get on to zero trust. Presidio Federal was recently formed by Presidio to exclusively serve our federal customers. Presidio has over 30 years experience serving the federal space, and so we understand our customers' missions and their acquisition processes. And we bring deep experience in successfully implementing our customers' IT modernization and transformation requirements. Because we represent most of the major vendors, we can provide a vendor-neutral assessment of our customers' unique situations, and we provide full installation, integration, and ongoing support. We've put together a diverse team of solution architects with deep expertise in the various technology areas, such as my area, security, hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure, disaster recovery, storage, wireless, collaboration, and others. And this ability to look at the big picture provides a big advantage in designing solutions. Recently, a customer asked us for a solution to their new requirement to expand their security log capture analysis and storage requirements, along with providing a method of transmitting a copy of their logs to CISA. An effective solution required incorporating security, storage, and transport, and we're able to put together a team from these three areas to design an effective solution. Presidio has a strong performance history with over 30 years of experience, and Presidio Federal leverages that experience. Okay, Terry, I'm done with the slide. Let's move on to Zero Trust. I think it's important to think of Zero Trust as the new overarching model, like defense in depth, not like getting a new product or solution. The Zero Trust model fundamentally changes how we access our data and processes, and it greatly increases the effectiveness of our current security tools. The conventional whack-a-mole method of identifying a new risk, implementing a security product to plug the gap, and then going on to identify the next pressing risk has failed. There's just too many areas to attack and too many new gaps to fill. Zero Trust transforms this approach by minimizing the areas that can be attacked. But to transform the complex infrastructures, as you've just heard about in the federal space, to a mature Zero Trust model while moving to the cloud will be a multi-year effort. I recommend that you first take a good look at your systems, people, and processes, and set up a long-range plan to put Zero Trust and a comprehensive automated network detection and response capability in place, and leverage cloud migration to implement the individual pieces. Automation is key, and if you have a manual process, look to eliminate it or automate it. Three good pieces to plan for are identity, inventory, and response. Under identity, we're talking about multi-factor authentication and integrating some of these new technologies with the conventional CAC-PIV technologies. Under inventory, get automated security asset management tools that can continuously probe for endpoints and their compliance. It's amazing to learn what you're actually attached to. This is a key first step to a more complete network visibility. And under response, implement the SIM and SORT detection and response products. Use hybrid solutions that include cloud and security intrusion and detection, and look to products that fully integrate with your existing tools and provide a single pane of glass view of your full network. Most networks have at least 40 security tools in operations. And how many of you have the staff to operate all of these to meet a current threat? I recommend implementing automation and integrating these tools into a single consolidated view. Okay, let's talk about Zero Trust first steps. The executive order and subsequent directives present a very broad set of strategic goals for the federal space, but the directives also contain three specific immediate actions. Adopt multi-factor authentication and eliminate passwords, encrypt your data, and prioritize the most sensitive data or data under the greatest threat for greater protection. It's no accident that these three actions were prioritized by the order. Easily hacked passwords, theft of unencrypted data, and serious breaches involving sensitive data are consistently ranked as the biggest vulnerabilities facing government organizations. Implementing these steps will address immediate threats and go a long way down the path to Zero Trust. First, adopting multi-factor authentication. Your CAC and PIV cards, they've been very successful go-to for access for some time. They have a robust issuing system that strongly identifies the holder and eliminates passwords. And it can not only be used for workstation access, but also at gate stores and as a wearable badge. But in case you haven't noticed, many of your personnel not many of your personnel really are passing through facility gates or doors these days, or logging into their cubicle workstations. There's a strong need for equally secure multi-factor solutions for mobile devices that incorporate new identification features such as facial recognition, but don't have the traditional CAC slot. The new FIDO2 protocol for multi-factor solutions allows an approved mobile device alternative to work alongside your traditional CAC-PIV type of solutions for federal users. Unlike previous authentication methods, multi-factor automatically re-authenticates every user every time they attempt to access a different application or object. Good multi-factor solutions access current risk using features like geolocation, biometrics, time limits, patch status, and others to provide a dynamic risk threshold for each access attempt. They eliminate a traditional VPN weakness where once you get in, you're into everything on the network. Just because you accessed a file from home doesn't mean you'll get the same access 10 minutes later from Ukraine. But authentication passwords are only a portion of the passwords in your network. Implementing multi-factor authentication would also be a good time to clean up your legacy permissions wherever possible. Search for all passwords, default certs, and other secrets in your code, applications, your tools, your service accounts, and other processes, along with privileged administrator accounts, and implement a password vault solution, eliminating as many passwords as possible, especially privileged passwords, is a great bang for the buck in preventing hackers from using escalation and lateral movement attacks against your system and data. Some legacy applications can only function with passwords and will need eventual replacement, and that should probably be planned for as future upgrades. The second thing is to encrypt your data at rest and in transit to the maximum extent. Traditional security goes to great lengths to keep the bad guys out. Zero trust assumes they're already inside, ready to extract your data. A great defense is to render your data useless to them with encryption. Most networks have a lot of encryption solutions already available. You may have self-encrypting hard drives and SSDs. Microsoft has BitLocker. You can probably encrypt your databases and use TLS between servers. I would implement whatever encryption you already have now. Then architect a complete encryption solution. Cloud migrations will require new solutions that take micro-segmenting and encrypting cloud native structures into account. However, encryption is a two-edged sword. By encrypting traffic, your sensors become blinded to indications of attack. You also need solutions that can break and inspect the increasing flow of encrypted connections to prevent malware and data loss. Break and inspect is very resource intensive. However, I'd look to cloud-based solutions that can handle these types of things. Prioritize, and third, prioritize your most sensitive data or data under greatest threat for solutions to that data. The process of implementing role-based access control for all your data and all your users is a major undertaking that you will eventually need to complete in the zero trust maturity process. So first identify usually about 10% of your unclassified data that would actually cause real harm if stolen or released, and focusing on just that will greatly simplify the task. Set strict guidelines and resist adding any data outside the guidelines at this stage. This will increase the chance you can complete your project successfully and in a reasonable time frame. A lot of your high-risk data is easy to find. It's already marked on things like PII or sensitive. Create solutions to isolate this data and limit access. Be especially aware of any outside connections to this data. Improperly implemented external connections have caused some of the worst supply-side breaches. If you have HIPAA implemented, you already have the isolation of sensitive patient data in place, and these designs would only need to accommodate any additional data you identify. To recap, I recommend adopting multi-factor authentication and eliminating passwords, encrypting data, and prioritizing the most sensitive data for greater protection. Thank you all very much, and I'm sure I'd be glad to work with you on these priorities.
Great, thank you so much. Let's bring David and Sunny back in for a roundtable discussion. Hi guys,
Great.
ready?
Ready.
Hello.
Great. Before we get into some meatier questions, there still seems to be some confusion about what zero trust means. Can you all define? David, can I start with you?
Yeah, so I'll keep this, in the interest of time, I'll keep it really simple. This is how I describe it to my front office. This is how I describe it to my people, the business owners of GSA, and anybody else. I say zero trust at the level means trust no one, trust no thing, verify and validate everything, assume that bad actors are on the inside, and validate every single thing, every data element, every application, every person, every tool continuously. That way you'll have a good idea of what's happening and what's moving throughout your enterprise.
Okay, great. Sunny, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, of course, David spoke very eloquently about that. It's basically, I think, a network security model. I'm a sort of an engineer, came up through the ranks, and so obviously from networking, now it's sort of it's based on strict identity verification process. So yes, the idea is the four main principles: never trust, always verify, least privilege, obviously, and default deny is what we call it. Have full visibility and inspection and centralized management. So it's a framework that allows us to authenticate and authorize users and devices so that what they can access applications and data, and at the same time protect those applications and data from advanced threats. So basically trust no one. And so it's not a technology or a tool, but a concept and framework. So it allows us to protect systems and data at all times. And I think it also helps us move protections to the edge so that instead of the perimeter of a data center, so it allows us to use what we call ICAM or Identity and Access Management or just IAM programs to protect information systems. So I think we want to obviously always ensure that we have the right people with authorized access, have access to our mission data that they need to get the job done. And we obviously want to make it more secure and reliable.
Clark, are you seeing some confusion out there, some different definitions that people are using, agencies?
Oh, sure. It's not a new concept. It's been around for 10 years, but for a lot of people, it is a more difficult concept to grasp. You have to get away from that, all the defense in depth and defending your perimeter kind of ideas, and just it really focuses on allowing the right person access to the right data at the right time. And those are some difficult and complex tasks to take on. And I just, my definition of it is really what David says, is just assume that you're always under attack, assume the intruders are on the inside, and don't allow processes to occur without validating exactly who's making that request.
Okay, great. So the Zero Trust Executive Order has shifted agencies' priorities. How can they best manage their many IT efforts from edge computing, multi-cloud, and remote work edge to ensure Zero Trust is integrated as well? And Sunny, let's start with you on that one.
So, I mean, I think in our broad mission, obviously, we first establish sort of a baseline. We've established a strategy, you pilot and test, and then you implement incrementally. So 4 things: baseline, strategy, pilot, test, and then implement incrementally. So we see this Zero Trust as a near-term capability, and there's several ongoing efforts to protect the network. I won't give all of it away in terms of, obviously, we watch very carefully what we say, but, a lot of people are very interested in what we're doing, but I'll say, obviously, using identity service engines, access control, so that we can add and authenticate endpoint devices and get some what we call machine certs so that we can grant access to the network. We're doing software-defined wide area network proof of concept to achieve some security using sort of the least privilege, default deny, and inspecting logging traffic with certain malicious activity. We're using secure access, secure service edge sort of solutions that we can do endpoint access control with user authentication. We're using cloud-based and software as a service system so that we can interact with the network using a sort of a broker architecture, a cloud access broker architecture. And we obviously support the new TIC 3.0 capability, where some of the web services environments and others we can use and reduce risk by using decentralized entry points and identified trust zone boundaries. We're also using a distributed security stack implementation based on CISA security services catalog. so that we can leverage native cloud services, but integrate into enterprise logging systems. So I think it's a holistic approach, but in the near term, we're certainly using some of the leading edge, should we say, capabilities to kind of look at that. But at the end of the day, as I mentioned, this is a framework, and technology is one part of it. We have to also look at many other aspects that bring it all together to success. We think this is at least a few-year journey, and we want all our government teams and contractor teams to work with us as we implement this journey.
Okay, what about you, David?
Yeah, so Sunny's answer was great. So I can't improve on that, but I'll add just a little bit. So we find that our initiatives across multi-cloud and edge computing and remote work edge, they're not really competing priorities with zero trust. They're complementary priorities. And the insertion of zero trust into that ecosystem of delivery of capability is critically important. And I'll go so far as to say that anybody who is not doing that is doing themselves a disservice and introducing unnecessary risk to their agency and or the commercial business that they're supporting. The idea of DevSecOps, where you would have developers of new capability, security personnel, and operations people, the end users of whatever thing you're developing, is not limited to just software. It's extensible into the infrastructure and foundational technology delivery capabilities. And so in that regard, when we're building out our cloud infrastructure, when we're looking at edge computing, when we're looking to enable the workforce to work from any location at any time on any device, we're bolting on that DevSecOps model to include the security engineers who are deeply experienced in zero trust, so that it's baked into everything we do. If you do that, if you don't do that, you're going to have a topical implementation of zero trust rather than zero trust as it's meant to be, where it's baked into every part of your IT infrastructure, from the application level to the SecOps level, to the infrastructure level, to the database level, and on and on and on and on. That's the only way that it works. So I don't see, it is a change in priority, but it's a complementary priority to everything, every good IT thing that's going on in the federal government.
What are you thinking about that, Clark?
Well, I'm thinking those are two very complete answers, and I agree with every single thing. I think what I would add is that this whole idea of zero trust, when you approach it, you're going to have to approach it from across all of the different business units in your agency, from the real stakeholders that have to have things working. If you try to take it as an IT-only approach, and of course that's what we promote, it's probably going to have some difficulties. It's a real change in philosophy and governance of the overall security of a network, the overall security, especially it becomes very data focused, not equipment focused. And the data owners, their participation and their enthusiasm in getting it done and their buy-in is going to be critical in a successful launch.
Okay. Clark, let's stick with you for a second here and talk about some of the best practices agencies can use at this point from your perspective.
Well, I think the best practices out there are to, as other guys have alluded to, the things you want to do are to bring in a large holistic look at what it is you're trying to accomplish. Understand you're not going to get it done in 1 year or 2 years. It's probably a long-term effort. And when you have that plan, get a plan that takes you down the road to where you want to be. It's zero trust is a continuous, it's a maturity model. It's not meant to be just thrown together at one time. And so it requires constant network improvement, and look to implement it on every new phase you're doing. We've touched on going into the cloud as the services come to the edge of the networks. There's fortunately a lot of good tools in place as you move away from some of your legacy structures to help you bring it in. And I would say the best practice there is to look at how, plan it and plan it and plan it before, and take it in steps.
Okay. Sunny, what are some of the best practices? And if you don't mind throwing in a few caveats as well.
Okay. Absolutely. Let me start off with one big caveat first. So I think the main thing is first, remember who we serve. It's all about the mission, because a lot of the folks have now got a little bit of cyber fatigue, the business of the mission, because what they're dealing with is the million passengers a day and pedestrians coming into our country. They have to apprehend about 1,000 of them every day. That come across with suspected violation of U.S. laws. We're processing something like, our systems are processing something like $4 trillion, out of which 2.7 trillion is the largest that we've sort of dealt with in trade that our systems are dealing with. We're dealing with sort of the largest encounters, 1.9 million encounters. We are, collecting second largest collection. So I'm just saying that mission. So when they see all this patching and zero trust and everything else, they get a little apprehensive. So what we tell them is, listen, we're trying to balance security and convenience and mission, but here's what we're dealing with. And that communication, trusted partnership has really taken off for us, because now everyone is looking at it and understanding what we're trying to do. And whenever we send out all the stuff that we're talking about cybersecurity, that conversation has allowed us to work with the top leaders, but also bring it down to the agent and officer as to, hey, listen, bear with us, but all this is making us more secure. And the fact that we have done well in this area has engendered street creds and trust. So I think I'd say that is one of the things that's sort of a caveat, that all of this requires a lot of work by CIOs to kind of convince people that we're not just techies just for the heck of it doing all these cyber upgrades. Having said that, the best practices, I just want to go through some points really quick. There needs to be foundational cyber hygiene. It's very crucial to zero trust frameworks. So asset management, inventory, patch management, configuration management, all that stuff. Second, prioritize mission needs over technology. So zero trust is relevant business drivers that I just talked about. Just instead of technology, talk about transformation and some of the things that they're interested in. Making it faster and better. We track some of those metrics as well, or it's more secure, therefore, obviates the need for, cleanup afterwards. Centralize some of the identity governance so that authentication, authorization, we can more enforce what we used to call granular real-time least privilege principles, so that we can look at all these network systems, workloads, data. We want to reduce the disruption and focus on low-risk targets, take an incremental approach to zero trust, meaning that, start off with something which is a low-risk environment before attempting to go to the crown jewels, which is the high-value assets. We have quite a few that we have to report to the White House that are national systems that run the mission of the country. And so those are the ones that you do last, but you kind of practice on other stuff first and make sure you're really solid on that. The journey is going to be long, so patience. Yes, it's complex. Zero trust is not something that's done easily. So anyone who tells you different, run away from them, because this typically involves multiple stakeholders, part of the business, a lot of conversation, a lot of patience. You have to gain consensus before embarking on the journey. This could also be a caveat, by the way. I think mature system application identity inventories, so that you know what you have, so what you need to protect. So this also goes with my asset management and classification. Sort of number 6. Number 7 would be well-defined policies and standards. I think consistent guidance that allows us to this journey and the risk tolerance, for the organization is really something important. I think in the government, we have very poor data classification standards sometimes, or not as good, or we overclassify too many things. So how can you do that without having a mosaic effect and then look at zero trust? Also in that context, those are difficult questions. And lastly, sort of a caveat also is that we have to sort of provide integration and APIs, which are application programming interfaces, support across the technology ecosystem so that we can automate and orchestrate these capabilities across these different pillars where we have zero trust enabled. So that takes a little bit of architecture and engineering. And as an engineer, I'm fascinated by some of the technical challenges. So every now and then when I, sort of get bored with leadership and management, I can go back to engineering and like Clark and David, we can do a little bit of what it really takes to do zero trust. And it's kind of fascinating. So sorry to geek out there, but every now and then you got to do a little bit of that. Thanks.
That's good. It's appropriate. David, what about you? What best practices and caveats do you see?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So it's going to be hard to top what Clark and Sunny went through. Very, very comprehensive. So I won't try to top it. I'll just add a couple of additional things. So on the best practice side, for my government colleague, I would say bring your business into the conversation early and often. Don't do zero trust to them, do zero trust with them. They will understand that this is going to require some differences in the way that you operate, differences in the way that you have operated your business and operated with your people that have been pretty firmly established for years and years. So bring in the business, let them be a part of what you're doing, so that as Sunny said, mission is not negatively impacted. So that you have mission at the very front. Many of us talk a great game about our move from a compliance-based framework for cybersecurity practice and operations to a risk management framework practice. Zero trust is really going to stress that pivot. It's going to highlight the fact if you've not made that pivot, because every decision you make, the zero trust is a digital representation of the risk management framework done literally in real time at massive scale. And the thinking, the thought process that goes into that at the beginning, at initial setup, is critically important. Technologists can't make those decisions by themselves. Business people have to be a part of that, because they're the ones who understand large parts or large swaths of that risk profile. So that's one thing. The other is, this is for my industry partners. So if you can't sell zero trust architectures, whether it's technology or system integration services or consulting services, you can't sell in this environment, you should probably be looking for another job. That target-rich environment that you're operating in can allow you to operate in a particular way. It will not be uncommon for you to approach an agency, some governmental entity, a commercial partner that is saying they want zero trust, but it's clear in the beginning of your engagement with them that they are not ready. They've not done their homework. They don't know the work necessary for a successful zero trust implementation. My suggestion to you is walk away from that engagement. Tell them what they need to do to get ready, and then circle back around in 6 months or 9 months or something like that. We, the government, need our industry partners to be focusing their time and attention on the highest value areas, and beating your head against the wall with an agency or some entity that's not ready for you is not good use of the limited set of resources that we have in the tech community. So be prepared to walk away from low value engagement. Hard for the business development people to hear that, but it's the right thing to do. And then the last thing is, this is kind of a caveat. I would make that organizational change management is a key part of any zero trust implementation. And this isn't a government specific thing. This is just zero trust, full stop. The zero trust environment presents a new way for businesses to use technology, applications, data, and it's going to be a hard shift for some of them. Many have spent years and years earning privilege and will be deeply disturbed by the fact taken away from them. And instead, what's given to them is privilege based on need, privilege based on any number of criteria that determine whether or not you at that particular moment are a risk or a value-added benefit to the business, and leverages and nets out your access based on all of those criteria. That's going to be a hard pill for some people to swallow, both on the technology side and on the business side. So you have to make sure you pay your dues on the organizational change management side, saying, we are not going to hamstring the business. This is actually what's best for your business and will yield the best outcomes for the entire workforce, all working towards that mission. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to stick with you for just a moment here, because I want to know how GSA can help agencies in their zero trust efforts.
Oh, okay. So we have a few different ways that we can help. First off, We have our centers of excellence. It's one of our business operating units in the technology transformation service. It has deep and meaningful experience in this space, and they can help agencies with their zero trust implementations, not only the technology pieces, the organizational change management piece that I talked about. Their work, their ability to help our federal partners is informed by the GSA experience internally in our implementation internally. They're not just a bunch of consultants who've never done a thing. They actually swap in and out of my organization and have material experience. That's one place. The other is the CDM program that we jointly run with DHS that allows agencies to buy codified, vetted security tooling that works in this zero trust space. Go look there, buy off of that, use the SINs associated with that. That can help as well. And then make sure when you're buying stuff, you're buying FedRAMP approved infrastructures so that you know the tools that you're inserting into the process aren't going to be a part of the problem, that they're going to be vetted, they're going to be secure, and they're going to be fit to mission for what you're trying to do.
Okay. So, Sunny, Customs and Border Protection has one of the most complex missions in the federal government, from facilitating trade to monitoring the border. How has Zero Trust facilitated and complicated that mission?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me answer in two parts. First, I'll reverse order it. How it's complicated the mission, and then I'll go to facilitate the mission. So I think on complicated the mission, obviously, as I mentioned before, success of the mission sort of requires the interaction between all these different groups. Our mission stakeholders, we call them trusted partners as opposed to customers. And of course, the providers like technology and us and a couple other entities. So we're establishing zero trust limits on users and systems. So this could lead to a potential slowdown and delay. And as David mentioned, that whole organizational change management culture, that discussion is happening. So we have an initiative called Trusted Partnership Initiative where we're having continuous dialogue, and that has gone well, not only with CBP, but across other stakeholders that we deploy. Keep in mind that obviously we not only deal with all of CBP, we deal across DHS, across all government agencies, then we deal across with 162,000 users across thousands of trade partners and industry, and then about 100 countries. So talking about this is a pretty big scale in that sense. I think we got to focus that zero trust diverts focus away from other mission needs. So you got to really make a value proposition as to why that is important versus something else. That's very hard for mission stakeholders to understand why this thing. And so that engagement with those trusted partnership and leadership, and then sort of communicating with everybody else is really important. It can also increase cost to the agency, so diverting funds from other mission needs. So that's a tough conversation. And especially as fee collection has gone down because of travel or COVID, you can just see sort of had a deleterious effect or has an impact. So those are hard challenges. So we're having to sort of put this in smaller increments and then go out slowly and smartly. But you just have to work smarter, not just harder, right? You got to not only do incremental, but tactical, but also look at strategic. So I think that's really important. To be competitive, obviously, businesses and mission need a zero trust network architecture so that we can look at how to protect the data. Too often we talk about all the other aspects of it. And so I think you look at users' devices, of course, while also ensuring that the applications work quickly and seamlessly with the data. So I think we not only look at users' devices, applications, and data moving outside the enterprise and how it's going back and forth and within control or not, within zones of control. We use business process-driven digital transformations also to take a look at it. So just trust but verify is no longer the option. We have to sort of advance threats are detected and checked at all times. We have a very good threat detection, and we always look at all the APTs as well. Very, very, very sophisticated, as I told you at scale, what I was giving you some numbers before. We also track perimeters which are complex and make sure that we adjust those a little bit in terms of how we can interact with our external. So that's how we complicate the mission, or how we complicate the mission with the zero trust. But on the other side of it, it also facilitates the mission. So it has had an accelerated sort of discussions on criticality of security and gone away from old architectures that may not work and assume breach, assume, like Dave mentioned, assume that something's already happened and then look at it that way. It brings up the urgency and exigency. We provides a more secure infrastructure. We feel pretty good, but we're using other techniques, including insider threat mitigation, all kinds of other stuff that we're using, that in case of a breach, you're also looking at what could exfil out, but also looking at containing and minimizing within. So that's really important. I think we're better prepared because we can also manage these threats better. We're also looking at emerging technologies. We're using a lot of stuff that allows us to be convenient. Like, our facial recognition allows travelers to come in within 2-second adjudication coming in out of the country. And we check against huge holdings that allow us to check that. With emerging technology like cloud architecture and other things, we can also minimize the attack surface when we're using zero trust sort of architectures to help secure those technologies. We're also managing risks in a sort of a complicated environments where, we can make sure that we can look at the overlay of zero trust very securely in very focused areas. We are also permitting, obviously, remote virtual work environments where contractors, govies, other agencies are working with us seamlessly. I told you about 68,000 people workforce, but more than that, just every day is working continuously using our capabilities. And lastly, I'd say we're also working together to implement this border so that everyone gets benefit of this in that trusted partnership thing. So it's, at the end of the day, what's in it for me? So I got to go to border protection, tell them what's good for them. Then field operations, what's good for them. Air and marine operations, what's good for them. Office of Trade for them. So I think with that in mind, all of this has sort of come together. So we are excited about the journey, and I think that's how we're doing to not only alleviate the complicated part of the mission, what Zero Trust brings, but also facilitate the mission. And I think so far we're doing well in that area. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for a great discussion. But now let's see what the audience has to say and see if we can squeeze in a couple of questions from them. How does the zero trust concept being described today interact with the CMMC process being implemented by DoD? I think maybe...
I don't know if Clark wants to start first, but we're happy to talk about it also.
Sure.
Clark hadn't talked, so I want to turn it over to him first.
Yeah, the CMMC process is, for those that don't know, it's the process by which contractors who want to sell products to DoD or government are bringing their own organizations into what really is sort of a typical. They're improving their security to the point that they can convince, as a supplier, that they have a secure method of operating their business and aren't going to put the government agencies at risk by having or lose data, sensitive data. So the same principles. It's identically the same process to bring zero trust to both of the federal agencies and their contractor customers. And the CMMC process, while it's undergoing some reevaluation right now, is an important step for those companies to meet those requirements. And so they'll be facing the same types of challenges of meeting all of the steps that the federal government agencies are expected to meet.
I would guess CMMC is more akin to FedRAMP than it is zero trust, in that it is an accreditation and authorization mechanism for either tooling or contractors. But CMMC is in the DoD space, FedRAMP's in the federal government space. I would guess that third-party assessors, which work in both environments, FedRAMP and CMMC, are going to be looking for the major tenets of zero trust in those toolings or those contracted offerings as a key component of their cybersecurity posture and stance. And if they're not seeing zero trust architectures and practices in there, it's going to raise some pretty significant red flags in both environments.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll just say from our side, in civilian agencies, we are obviously just watching it with some interest. But DoD still not got the full maturity in this area, so we are also watching it carefully. But we're doing some other things to compensate for what we expect out of our vendor community and working with that aspect of it. But CMMC, we're sort of just interested from our CVP standpoint, but not fully adopting yet.
Okay, great. Well, you guys, that's going to have to be it for today. I'd like to thank David, Sunny, and Clark for an information-packed session. Thanks also to Presidio Federal and Cisco for sponsoring this webcast. And just a reminder, in the next day or so, we're going to be emailing you a link to an archived version of the session so you can review it or share it with a colleague. Thank you all for attending today. And that concludes today's webcast. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Great. It's been
Thank
our
you.
pleasure.
Thank you very much.